All right, and we're going to get started. I hope everyone could hear me. As students continue to join us, we welcome you. We understand that we have students from all across SMC, but in particular, we want to congratulate the class of 2020. So for our new SMC students, welcome to the SMC family, and welcome to the SMC Promise workshop as part of Welcome Week. So I'll introduce myself. My name is Stuart Ortiz. I'm a counselor at Santa Monica College, so I work in academic counseling. I'm also a former alum, and I'll let my colleague, Nick, introduce himself.
Thank you, Stuart. My name is Nick Chambers. I work in the Admissions and Records Office. I'm also a former alum.
Nice, very good. So if you're joining us today, it's about SMC Promise. What is SMC Promise? So we're going to talk about that in specifics in terms of perks, so benefits of being a part of SMC Promise. Also eligibility. How can you be eligible? How can you qualify for SMC Promise? And then we'll cover some more things in details, and we'll leave time at the end, we promise, for your questions. So we hope that you can see the chat box, that you leave your questions in the chat box. We promise we'll try to get to every question at the end. We understand that some questions may be of an individual nature and may not be answered in this format, but we will get to every question. So anything related to SMC Promise. At this point, we're going to go ahead and get started, and I'll hand it back off to Nick.
Thank you, Stuart. So the Santa Monica Promise is actually the result of AB 19, which was signed in 2017. So it's relatively new. We're going on our third year of the SMC Promise here. And the state of California provides funding to Santa Monica College to improve college readiness, to increase completion rates, and to close the achievement gaps. In order to receive this funding, students must meet certain criteria. And I'll go into more details on that later. But it's important right now to discuss the Santa Monica Promise as a financial award and not as a program in the traditional sense at Santa Monica, in which it has its own department. It's actually comprised of several departments. The most notable departments would be the Welcome Center, Counseling, Admissions and Records, but there are several other departments that play a role, and we'll discuss those roles throughout the presentation. So the SMC Promise will provide free enrollment or up to $1,200 in book vouchers, and that can last up to 2 years. Now, we also offer priority registration for students that are currently eligible for the SMC Promise, and we offer additional academic counseling support. Now, it's important to note that the $1,200 textbook voucher is specifically for students who are receiving the California College Promise Grant. The California College Promise Grant is different than the SMC Promise, so there's confusion because they both include the word promise, but they are two very different programs. And looking at the chart here, we can see that the enrollment fees at a minimum will equate to $552. If you take more than 12 units, that amount will be higher. It also covers the associated student body fee of $19.50, the SMC ID card of $13, and the $21 health fee. as well as our student representation fee of $2. Now, to be eligible for the SMC Promise, students must have graduated from a public or private California high school in 2020. This is for fall 2020 eligibility as your first term here at SMC. Must be attending SMC as a first-year student. Another requirement, students must be California residents or have been approved for AB 540 in order to maintain your eligibility for the SMC Promise. Must be taking 12 or more units this fall, must complete 12. And finally, but very important, our financial aid office must receive your FAFSA or California Dream Act application before the start of the term. So if that's something you need to do, you want to make sure that you do that immediately as soon as possible. And with that, I'll hand it back to Stuart.
Great, thanks, Nick. And so on the screen, we can see information for the FAFSA, which hopefully, if you're joining us today, you've already filled out. If not, here's some information on, you can still fill out a FAFSA to submit to Santa Monica College. In relation to SMC Promise, separate from the FAFSA, there is an SMC Promise deadline, which we will get into a little bit later in the workshop, but you still have time to fill out the FAFSA, so it's something that everyone should consider. And if you're unfamiliar with the website, it's fafsa.ed.gov. And in lieu of the FAFSA for our DACA Dreamer undocumented students, we have the California Dream Act. Essentially functions the same. So we also have the website up right now. So if you want to take a screenshot, take a picture of it, if you're unfamiliar, but you know, this will be the application that you'll need to fill out. It's dream.csac.ca.gov. So again, we mentioned in the eligibility slide how important it is to have a FAFSA or Dream Act on file with SMC. Now, how are we able to get into viewing SMC Promise as a student? So everything is funneled through the SMC website. So smc.edu, and in particular, well, on the new website, if you go to login, at the very top, you'll see a pop out, and we want to go to Coursera Connect. Coursera Connect is the name of the student portal that students use to access for enrollment and other functions related to their time at SMC. Once you're logging in, it's your ID number. Everyone should have been assigned an ID number when they applied. It's your permanent ID number. Password, if it's your first time logging in, it's your 6-digit birthday or date of birth. Last 2 digits of the year, not the full year. If you've logged in before, then you've already activated your account and changed your password. Excuse me. Once you're on Coursera Connect, you're going to go to the enrollment tab, as you see highlighted here. There's a couple of different ways to get there. It's in the upper right-hand corner or towards the middle. It lists enrollment services. So you want to click on that, and it's going to default to summer because we're currently still in the summer term. So where you see the little fingers, you'll want to change it to fall 2020 because, again, when we're discussing SMC Promise, we're primarily discussing it for the upcoming term, fall 2020. And then you'll see a long menu of options on the left side once you're on the fall 2020 page, one of which is Santa Monica College Promise. So we want to go ahead and click on that. If you don't see any messaging on Coursera Connect, many of you will see your enrolled classes. For our sample, we've blocked it out, but you may see a messaging that says opt-in. If you don't, that's okay. You should see this messaging about Santa Monica College Promise. And this is typically what the messaging looks like. It can vary depending if you're a new student, continuing student, where you're at in the process. Some students may have enrolled in the 12 units, but don't have a FAFSA or Dream Act on file, or vice versa, have a FAFSA or Dream Act on file, but haven't hit the 12 unit minimum mark. What you want to look for in particular, we won't go over it in detail, is eligible. You want to see that you're eligible, but you always want to check in with a counselor. It mentions Welcome Center counselor, but really you could check in with any counselor, whether it's on drop-in through QList or any format that you can speak with a counselor just to confirm eligibility. But you should see this messaging under SMC Promise. And then at the bottom, it gets into, again, some of the eligibility and perks that we've already discussed. Also on Coursera Connect, it'll mention fee assessment. Let me go back really quickly. It shows fee assessment a little bit above Santa Monica College Promise. When you're on the fee assessment page, now many of you have enrolled but haven't seen this page yet. It's very important because on the fee assessment, it breaks down those fees that we discuss in terms of perks. Course fees, which is like your tuition, so actual class enrollment, and then student fees, which you see broken down in terms of like ID card fee, health fee, etc. What you want to be aware of, there's a section that says fee waiver. Many of you will see an X. This is where it gets a little bit tricky. The fee waiver and the X is in relation to the California College Promise Grant, which is a mouthful, and it also says promise. So we're gonna call it oftentimes CCPG or sometimes the fee waiver. And we'll get into the details of that in a little bit. But just to clarify, if you see fee waiver, that's great. That's not SMC Promise. You won't see SMC Promise on this page. It was on the previous slide where you could see your SMC Promise messaging. This is a little bit different. This is more on the financial aid side in relation to that California College Promise Grant fee waiver. Where can you see additional financial aid information? Again, it works in tandem with SMC Promise. It's very important for everyone to be aware of what their financial aid status is if they filled out a FAFSA or Dream Act and submitted it to SMC. On the home page, we discuss enrollment services. There's also a quick links menu, and towards the bottom, you'll see financial aid. So you want to go ahead and click that to view your financial aid portal. Here's a screenshot of the financial aid portal. Now, there's more to the portal. You'll see more messaging. Oftentimes, students are requested to submit additional documents through eDocs. What we want to look for, sometimes we'll see a red arrow. That's okay. It just means something, it requires action pending. But we want to look for the green check marks. And again, because it's related to financial aid, on here, we'll see CCPG, California College Promise Grant, fee waiver, separate from SMC Promise. So on here, it'll say your enrollment fees will be automatically waived when you enroll. That was the little X that we saw in fee assessment. So again, separate from SMC Promise. And if you're ever meeting with a counselor or staff at SMC and they refer to it as the fee waiver or the Board of Governors, BOG, sometimes the terminology takes a while to translate. They changed the term a couple years ago. So the official word is California College Promise Grant, but it was formerly known as the Board of Governors fee waiver. Again, we like to abbreviate and call it CCPG fee waiver. It waives your fees. It's not an additional check that you're going to receive additional funding. It just automatically waives your fees. So how does it work? We'll talk about it in relation to SMC Promise. So formerly the BOG fee waiver, and it waives your fees for the entire academic year. So if you qualify, it's good for the entire year, fall, winter, spring, summer. No unit minimum. So we talked about how important it is to have that 12 unit minimum, which is designated as the minimum for full-time student status at SMC. For the CCPG to apply, there is no unit minimum. So essentially you could take one class in the summer and it'll apply for that one class. As my colleague Nick discussed, California resident or AB 540 student. So again, our California residents, if we have any out-of-state students joining us, thank you for being here with us. There are additional financial aid you could qualify for, but again, this is for our in-state students. And how is the CCPG different than SMC Promise, even though they both have Promise in their title? The CCPG covers enrollment fees only, so just the tuition fees, and is for students who financially qualify, so only for low-income students that qualify. SMC Promise, however, is not dependent on student financial needs. So we do have students that filled out a FAFSA, for example, submitted, didn't qualify for financial aid via FAFSA, but still met the criteria for SMC Promise. And as we discussed, SMC Promise also covers those additional student fees. So the fee waiver through CCPG will cover classes only. SMC Promise will cover your tuition and those additional student fees, the ID card, the health fee, etc. And for students who already qualify for the fee waiver, if you're already getting free tuition anyways, as my colleague Nick discussed, you now qualify for a textbook voucher. So only for students who receive the CCPG, again, because you were already getting free tuition, now you're qualifying for the textbook voucher, up to $1,200 for the academic year. How is it broken down? So $500 for the fall, so for fall 2020, and spring, which is also another traditional term, 16 weeks. We also have winter and summer, and there are a few students that qualify for SMC Promise. It's rare, and the textbook voucher is only $100 for winter and summer, not ideal. So ideally, when we're discussing SMC Promise for students, it's for fall and spring. The timeline to use your voucher started already, August 17th, but you have until October 30th. Ideally, you would be getting your books, if you haven't already, during that first week of fall, so next week. Where can we get our books? With everything remote, it's through the SMC bookstore. So here's the website. Again, you want to take a screenshot, a picture, bookstore.smc.edu, and only at the SMC bookstore. So I know many of you may get your books through a third party, online, Amazon. That's great, but the voucher can only be applied for the bookstore and only for required materials. So again, you may see these wonderful Proud to be SMC t-shirts. You might want one. We want you to get one, but it's only for the required textbook materials. And we do have something called an SMC Promise Starter Kit, which is kind of like supplies for students to get started for the year that's bundled together. So mainly used towards books up to $500 for the fall. How do you apply the voucher? So you'll go to the bookstore, you'll look up your books with the section number, instructor's last name. You're getting ready to purchase. You can apply, it's called A&R, so like admissions and records charge at the checkout. So that's applying the voucher and it's applied to your balance. So if your books cost $300 total with tax and shipping, then the voucher will cover that. If you're taking a significant amount of units, let's say it exceeds $500, then up to $500 will be applied, and then you'll just be required to take care of the balance. With that, I'll pass it back to Nick for the next slide.
Thank you, Stuart. So let's discuss some very important things regarding the SMC Promise. So the Promise deadline is September 13th. You want to make sure that you've opted in, that you meet all the requirements by September 13th in order to maintain eligibility. And then students with disabilities may be eligible for a reduced course load. So may be approved to take less than 12 units. If that's something that you are interested in pursuing, please reach out to our Center for Students with Disabilities to request that accommodation. And importantly, this is potentially a 2-year program for our incoming students. Now, in order to be eligible for spring 2021, you want to make sure that you maintain and complete 12 units during the fall 2020 term. And by complete, I mean receive an A, B, C, D, or if you take the class pass, no pass, receive a passing grade. And as Stuart mentioned earlier, winter and summer is a very difficult requirement to obtain. It is optional, so it will not count against your eligibility for future terms. There is a 12-unit minimum requirement if you are taking classes during the winter term or the summer term. In order to receive the Santa Monica College Promise, you would be required to take and complete 12 units during that term. It is 6 to 8 weeks, and typically students take between 3 and 8 units. 8 units is maximum. However, the CCPG fee waiver still applies regardless of how many units you take. So if you are receiving the CCPG waiver and you only take 3 units or you take less than the unit requirement, what you'll be missing out on are the student fees and the book vouchers for that term, but your enrollment fees would still be covered. And here are a few frequently asked questions that we receive. What if I already paid my tuition fees? So we will reimburse the fees at the end of the term, provided that you've completed all your requirements. And if you've already paid for books and you're eligible for a book voucher, our bookstore will offer refunds through the bookstore. Just make sure that you save all of your receipts. It's important to have your receipts. And what if I don't have the CCPG fee waiver? When will my fees be paid? So on the fees assessment screen, you may still see that your fees are listed. That's because the Santa Monica Promise will not pay out until the end of the term. And you want to make sure that you complete 12 units so that you receive the SMC Promise. And those fees will be paid by SMC. So you'll receive free tuition. It just won't show on your fees assessment page yet. And I'm not doing so well in one of my classes and may need to drop below 12 units. When can I drop the class? How will it affect my SMC Promise? This is a very important question that you may have in the future. And the answer to that question depends on at what point in the term or semester that this action occurs. So be aware of the withdrawal deadlines highlighted in Coursera Connect. And also be aware that at any time that you drop below 12 units, you risk losing eligibility for the current and future terms with the SMC Promise. So I strongly recommend if you are dropping a class that will bring you below that 12-unit requirement, that you reach out to a counselor to discuss dropping that class and how it affects your SMC Promise eligibility before you place that drop. And for general questions, our Welcome Center is a great resource. Reached at 310-434-8101 or Welcome Center at smc.edu. And in summary, I just want to highlight several of the departments that we mentioned that are involved with the SMC Promise and where you should reach out should you have any issues that are related to those departments. So first, we'll begin with admissions. Stuart shows you how to find the SMC Promise link. That link will be viewable to any student that has completed high school in the year 2020 in a California public or private high school, and who's also listed as a California resident or been granted AB 540 for the fall term. So if you do not see that link, but those requirements do apply to you, I recommend that you reach out to Admissions and Records. Admissions and Records is responsible for correcting any information on your account that may be inaccurate, which has an effect on your eligibility for SMC Promise. So if you need to make any corrections to your residency or your educational history, you can do that through admissions. And then if you have any questions regarding dates and deadlines as it applies to SMC Promise, I also recommend reach out to admissions. And then if you have questions regarding your FAFSA or California Dream Act application, do see the Promise screen and it lists no for financial aid application received, but you know that you completed it and you had your results sent to SMC. I recommend that you reach out to our financial aid office. And if you have any questions regarding your CCPG, the California College Promise Grant eligibility, I also recommend you reach out to our financial aid office. And to request a reduced course load accommodation, you'll want to reach out to our Center for Students with Disabilities. And we are offering ID cards for this fall term. And in the past, we have offered ASB membership stickers. That's handled through our cashier's office. And to use the vouchers with at the SMC bookstore, if you have any difficulties in using the voucher, if your textbooks come out to more than that $500 voucher, you may need to reach out to the SMC bookstore for your assistance. And to discuss the impact of dropping a class, dropping below that unit requirement, again, I strongly recommend that you reach out to a counselor before you make any changes. And if you Want to double check your eligibility, or if you have general questions regarding the Santa Monica College Promise, our Welcome Center is another great resource. And we'll skip to the next slide, which changes it slightly. These are all the best ways, the email addresses to each of these departments, with the exception of counseling. You can with a counselor by visiting smc.edu/counseling. So with that, we'll give you a minute to take a screenshot or to write down any of these email addresses. Thank you for your time. I'll hand it back to Stuart.
All right, hopefully everyone had a chance to get that screen. Also, just want to emphasize that an initial starting point is smc.edu promise, just for off the website initial information. Also, many of the updates for the term will be shared there, and there's more frequently asked questions on the Promise webpage. So smc.edu/promise. And with that, we're going to get to questions, but we want to let you know that we're proud to be SMC, and we hope you are as well. And we want to emphasize that this is just the first workshop of Welcome Week. We will have additional workshops. This workshop ends at 10:45 p.m. promptly, so we're going to get over to the questions. The next workshop should be beginning at 11 a.m. So we hope that you join us for the rest of the day and throughout the week as well. Great, so let's get over to the questions, and we'll spend the remaining time trying to answer your questions as best as possible. If we have a volume of questions, we may not be able to get to all of them. And then again, some of the questions may best be answered in an individual setting, depending on the nature of the question. As my colleague shared, it may go to the appropriate office. We'll try to get to all of them as possible. And I think I saw we have 290 questions, so I don't think we'll be able to get to all of them. I believe it starts 6 minutes ago. I'm gonna try to get all the way to the bottom. And just bear with me, it's loading all the questions. And it may not be able to get all the way to the bottom. So I'll start with the first question I see. Am I qualified for the voucher even if I'm not eligible for the SMC Promise, but I have the CCPG? Yes, they can be independent of each other. So a student can have the California College Promise grant, but not have SMC Promise yet. So, and vice versa, a student can have SMC Promise, but didn't qualify for the California College Promise grant. Many students have both, but they are independent of each other in that sense. Another question, it won't allow me to join any more classes. For that, I recommend, and I'll share it as we get to the end because I do want to get to all the questions. We do have a counseling queue line. If there's any counselors that are also joining us for the workshop, that can put it into the chat. But if you go to the slide where Nick mentioned counseling, you will go to the general counseling page, and it does have information on the counseling callback queue where you could sign up to meet with a counselor and discuss about still being able to join classes. We don't want students to give up. We understand a lot of classes are already filled and show that there aren't any space available, but there is a wait list and there are opportunities for students to still try to add classes. So don't give up on that. What are the steps to apply for CCPG? Great question. So if you fill out a FAFSA or ultimately have a DREAM Act with, we mentioned AB 540 affidavit, essentially a form, students will automatically be reviewed for eligibility for the California College Promise Grant. So many of you may have qualified for the CCPG without having known about it or applied for it directly. Also, when we were on Coursera Connect, and we showed you that menu where it said SMC Promise, fee assessment, there is a link for California College Promise Grant where you could see if you've already been considered for eligibility, or if you don't have a FAFSA on file, you can fill out a quick form for the CCPG directly. So there's a couple of different ways. Some students fill out the form. Most students don't have to. They just have the FAFSA and they're automatically reviewed for it. All right, so for some questions I won't, and there are some duplicates. Okay, just to clarify, does not accepting the Santa Monica College Promise in the winter, summer affect eligibility for the fall, spring? Nick, I'll defer to you for that one. So the question is, if you don't accept it or opt in for fall, does that affect for spring or future terms?
Yes, so potentially if you qualify for SMC Promise, but you do not meet the requirements, which includes opting in for fall 2020, then you risk losing your eligibility for SMC Promise. And what that means is you won't be eligible spring term as well. So you want to make sure that if you potentially meet the requirements for SMC Promise, that you complete all those requirements by September 13th.
Yeah, definitely. So it's not simply just being eligible, that you opt in by September 13th. What if I paid my fees and then added SMC to my FAFSA? How do I tell if I qualify for a fee waiver? So we reviewed that in the PowerPoint presentation, where you could see if you already have a fee waiver in place. You could see it on the fee assessment page or on your financial aid portal. And then if you were originally going to another college or intended to attend another college or university, if you haven't already, you definitely want to update your FAFSA to list SMC as one of your schools, so that it is sent to our financial aid office and processed, so that we have your FAFSA on file. So that is something that you want to take care of in terms of turnaround time. And again, in terms of SMC Promise, we're looking at September 13th as a hard deadline. What if you graduated 2019, but it's your first year attending at SMC this fall? Nick, do you want to answer that one?
That really does depend on your coursework from 2019. So if you want to email admissions at smc.edu to discuss your eligibility with the SMC Promise, we'll get back to you as soon as we can.
Another question, how can I get the voucher? So again, it would be through our bookstore. So you definitely want to go in online if you know that you are eligible for the voucher because you have the CCPG and you've opted into SMC Promise. When you go online to get your books through the SMC bookstore, at checkout, you can apply the voucher. It says ANR code, and that would be applying the voucher up to $500 for the fall. And so I apologize. Some of these questions we won't be able to get to. I met all requirements for the SMC Promise, but I received an email saying my eligibility is pending. Why is that? You definitely want to make sure that where the email stems from, if it's SMC Promise versus California College Promise Grant in relation to the email, or if it's in relation to financial aid. Oftentimes for financial aid, it could be that your FAFSA or Dream Act was received, but there's pending documents. So you want to go into that portal, make sure that if there's requested documents, it says eDocs, and that you're filling out and submitting those documents. Sometimes students can fill out a FAFSA and they're missing a parent signature, or there was an error on their FAFSA and it says they're ineligible or they won't qualify. Remember, for those things, it's temporary. Just because you're ineligible or there was an error on your FAFSA or something is pending, that can be temporary, that can be fixed. So we recommend that you look into that. Now, if you've submitted those documents, there is a turnaround time, and if you're still not sure if you're going to hear back, we recommend, as Nick showed you, there's offices for the appropriate question that you could reach out to receive help for your question. Is there any financial aid or vouchers for international students? So for international students, unfortunately, international and out-of-state students, again, this workshop is specific to SMC Promise. Unfortunately, international students wouldn't qualify for SMC Promise. Again, for California residents, whether through FAFSA, Dream Act, AB 540. Okay, and searching through the questions. Some duplicate questions. Can you be eligible international? So some duplicate questions. Let me get through it.
I see several questions regarding the SMC ID card. So to get the SMC ID card, you'll want to mail a passport style photo along with a government issued photo ID to cashier@smc.edu. And the cashier's office will then print an SMC ID card for you and mail it to your mailing address on file. So make sure you update your mailing address if it's changed through Corsair Connect. But that's how we're handling SMC ID cards this term.
Thank you, Nick. Another question. My household income was too high to be eligible for SMC Promise when I put in my FAFSA, but things have drastically changed now. Is it possible for me to take part in Promise now that I should qualify? The best way to answer that question is you may still be eligible. And the key thing is that for SMC Promise specifically, separate from qualifying or being eligible to receive an award through financial aid, through FAFSA, or the California College Promise Grant. So if we're talking just SMC Promise, it's not dependent on income. So there is, for SMC Promise, there is no income that is too high. So as long as you meet the 12 units or more for fall, so a minimum 12 units, and you have a FAFSA or Dream Act on file, and again, we're talking about new students, so first-time college student graduating high school 2020, as my colleague Nick discussed, then you could still qualify for SMC Promise. Nick, do you want to add anything to that?
No, that's really good. The SMC Promise will pay in one of two ways. You'll either receive the enrollment fees if you do not qualify for the CCPG. If you do qualify for the CPG, then your enrollment fees are already waived by the CCPG. So you'll then in turn receive the SMC book vouchers.
Okay, and we have another question. I still had to pay for the student ID, student representation, ASB member. So basically the student fees. If you paid for the student fees, does the SMC Promise or CCPG apply for these fees? CCPG does not. It is strictly for course tuition. So again, money you don't see, it just waives the tuition fees. SMC Promise will cover the student fees, whether you have the CCPG or not. So if you paid for those fees, the SMC Promise can essentially cover it. Nick, do you want to share a little bit more about the reimbursement if a student paid for the student fees, but is now SMC Promise?
Yeah, so if you've already paid for the enrollment fees or the student fees, you'll receive a refund form of a check, which will go to your address. So again, make sure that your mailing address is updated. You can change that through Corsair Connect. And that refund will be issued at the end of the term after SMC has paid for fees through SMC Promise. And if you've already paid for your books, make sure you save your receipts and get in touch with our bookstore to request a refund book vouchers.
Yeah. Thank you. So another question was, so if I don't have that X in the fee waiver, I have to pay the $1,200. I'm crying. Don't cry. If you don't have the CCPG, it could be a number of reasons why, and we won't get into detail because that can change. But assuming you don't qualify for the CCPG, California College Promise Grant Fee Waiver, it'll show that you owe your fees. However, this is where SMC Promise comes into play. If you view the SMC Promise link on that fall 2020 menu and you see the SMC Promise messaging and you're eligible and opted into SMC Promise, although it won't show on the fee assessment page, your fees are covered, course and student fees. So don't worry about that. If you don't have either, then we are talking about you paying for classes. However, with the fee payment deadline having passed already, the new fee payment deadline is the same day that you enroll. So if you didn't pay for your classes and you haven't already enrolled and it's was on a previous day, so you didn't enroll this morning, you're not in fear of getting dropped. So that would mean you are SMC Promise. In a nutshell, I always recommend checking with a counselor, which goes back to Nick's page about what the appropriate offices are to make sure that you verified that you have opted into SMC Promise. But essentially, SMC Promise will pay the $1,200 even if it doesn't show on the fee assessment page. Why are the vouchers not ideal for winter and summer? Nick, do you want to elaborate on that?
Sure. So it's not ideal because in order to qualify for this SMC Promise, you are required to take 12 units during the winter term or 12 units during the summer term in order to qualify for that book voucher. And even if you do qualify, it's only $100. So it's very rare that a student qualifies for the SMC Promise during the winter or summer term. The good news is that these terms are optional and they do not count against your future eligibility with the SMC Promise.
Thank you, Nick. And I have one more for you since we were discussing this before the presentation started. The Student Road Financial Aid Office has been ghosting me. So essentially they haven't been able to get a hold of Financial Aid Office. How should I contact them? What's the best method?
So I recommend visiting our financial aid page. I know our financial aid office is receiving an influx of calls and emails, so we do appreciate your patience. We offer many different ways to reach out to our financial aid office, and it can be very competitive, I understand. But if you try to sign up for our queue list at the moment it opens, you also email, you call, do our best to get back to you as soon as we can.
Another question. I'm at 11.5, so 11 and a half units. Can I still apply? In terms of still being eligible, someone else wrote no. And that's true in terms of you're currently not eligible, but can you still apply? Can you still reach eligibility? Yes. So you can still, if you meet those criteria that was discussed at the beginning of the presentation, if you reach that before the September 13th opt-in deadline, you can still qualify for SMC Promise for fall 2020.
Just to add, if you have opted into SMC Promise, whether or not you've completed the financial aid or you've met the 12-unit requirement yet, you have received a fee postponement. So if you see that eligibility screen when you click the Santa Monica College Promise link in Cursor Connect, that means you're receiving a fee postponement. You are not required to pay your enrollment fees at this time or any of the student fees, so you can receive your ID card without paying that ID card fee. You just want to place your request for that ID card through cashier at smc.edu, and then those fees will be paid at the end of the term, drop from your courses.
Great. And we understand there's a lot more questions. Unfortunately, we're not able to get to all of them. We'll answer one more because we are past our time, and then we do have to end the recording. So I appreciate all of you being with us today. Final question, and it's just clarification on the reimbursement timeline. Nick, if you can cover that one, please.
The reimbursement timeline, if you've already paid your fees, reimbursement. So the SMC Promise pays at the end of the term. So we will issue that check that you should receive it within 3 weeks after the fall 2020 term ends. If you have any questions regarding the refund, I ask that you email admissions@smc.edu and give you more information regarding the refund.
Thank you so much, Nick. And thank you everyone for joining us today. This does end our SMC Promise broadcast. Again, I encourage everyone to join some of the other workshops. The next one is starting in about 10 minutes at 11 a.m. And we will have other workshops going the entire week up until Friday. So thank you for being with us. If you're a new student, welcome to SMC. And for everyone, proud to be SMC. Thank you so much.
Thank you.